Hey, what is up, guys? It's Nice Creator here. So I'm going to be ranking all the Spider-Man movies. This is going to be from the first Spider-Man, 2002, all the way to No Way Home, 2021. So let's get into this. So the first Spider-Man, definitely an amazing movie. The plot for that movie was definitely a great plot for Spider-Man films and superhero films in general. The casting choice for that as like Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker and Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin was definitely phenomenal. Green Goblin, the way that Willem Dafoe portrayed Norman Osborn slash Green Goblin was definitely phenomenal as well. Definitely played an amazing villain. Definitely had added a little bit of a scare factor into his villain, and definitely made Peter Parker's life a living hell in this movie. So, taunting Peter Parker with Aunt May and MJ. So definitely a phenomenal movie. I think it's definitely a benchmark for origin stories and superhero films in general. The next one, actually, hold up. This is the original Spider-Man. I don't know why, but next up is going to be Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2, definitely a better version of Spider-Man 1. Definitely had a better plot. Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, portrayed the character so well as a nuclear physicist. Um, I do love I do love Alfred Molina as a character for Doc Ock, and the casting choice was just great. It's basically like the same as the original Spider-Man, So definitely a great casting choice, and I love the reveal of Spider-Man having his identity revealed by Harry Osborn, his best friend, after he, I guess, supposedly or in his mind, Peter Parker killed Norman Osborn slash Green Goblin, because Green Goblin died in the first movie. So to have Harry Osborn, or Norman Osborn's son slash best friend, um, figure out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, definitely a great reveal. And definitely elevated superhero films and Spider-Man films in general. Next movie up, we're gonna have Spider-Man 3. I say it's a decent movie. It's definitely not great. It's a good movie, but it's definitely not one of the greats. Even though it is a fun movie to watch, the story was kind of rushed there with the symbiote, and the villains in that movie were, I mean, Sandman was definitely a great villain. Harry Osborn as the New Goblin, which is just a stupid name for a villain. He was definitely a decent villain. Near the end, he kind of redeemed himself with his character. But Venom slash Eddie Brock in this movie was definitely awful. I don't know why they decided to. I don't know why Sony was like, let's push Venom into this movie, but it definitely did not work out. They should have just kept Sandman and New Goblin for the villains in this movie, and it probably would have been a great or even an amazing movie. And probably would have made the story not so rushed. But yeah, the story felt rushed near the end with the symbiote, and it just wasn't a good. I mean, it wasn't a good plot. The characters, however, they played their role. They played their part very well. And there's also the infamous Bully Maguire dance. Definitely a great meme, and definitely, and I'd probably just give it decent just because of that meme. But the plot, the characters, and the villains were all right. So it's definitely not a bad movie. It's definitely a fun movie to watch, but it's definitely not the best Spider-Man movie to ever watch. Next up, we're gonna be having the first Amazing Spider-Man. Um, I actually like this more. I like this movie more than the original Spider-Man 3. I mean, I think it had a little bit of a better plot than Spider-Man 3. I think the Amazing Spider-Man, like Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker's chemistry there was definitely phenomenal. Definitely better than the Peter Parker and MJ chemistry and the Raimi trilogy. Um, the Mark Webb's Amazing Spider-Man, I think it did have a better villain, or I think it did have a little bit of a better villain. Lizard, even though his motives was kind of not great, his character though, however, his um, you know, Dr. Curtis Connors' character was definitely a. I don't hate the character of Dr. Curtis Connors. I thought he actually was a pretty good Lizard and Kurt Connors, but I definitely think it's better than the original Spider-Man. And the casting was it was mostly good, except for Andrew Garfield was kind of hated at the time because he was portraying like an edgy Peter Parker. However, I do think he actually played a good Peter Parker simply because in the comics, Peter Parker in the comics was definitely kind of like a little bit of a dickhead. He did have a little bit of an attitude in the comics, so the way that they portrayed him as to having a little bit of an attitude in this movie was definitely uh, good. I do love that. So and it definitely did change the Peter Parker origin story a little bit compared to the Raimi trilogy and even the comics. So the next one up is going to be Amazing Spider-Man 2. Definitely, I think it's probably the worst Spider-Man movie. The plot wasn't good. Definitely felt rushed. Green Goblin as a character was not a good character. However, Electro, I actually do like his villain. His villain was definitely a fun villain to watch. Even though he is a misunderstood villain, I do love his portrayal of Electro, and the fact that he came back in No Way Home was definitely a great idea. Um, and then even the chemistry with Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker somehow got better in this movie. Even though they broke up for a little bit, it definitely felt a little bit more like solidified and definitely felt better in this movie than I think in the first movie. However, in the second movie, Gwen Stacy does die, and I think that is a perfect scene in that movie. It definitely made Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man a little bit more human because superheroes are going to have to deal with loss. So it definitely made I think it made this Andrew Garfield Spider-Man a little bit better. Um, but overall, the plot wasn't there, and the villains weren't mostly there. And they brought in Rhino too. He was there for like a split second, but he wasn't even that great. So definitely not that great. It was definitely kind of a terrible. I mean, I don't think I would consider it terrible. I just think I would consider it not good. So that would be a not good there. Next up is going to be Homecoming. I do like this movie. Um, I don't think it's as good as the original Spider-Man, but this movie was definitely a good start to the Holland trilogy. Um, Having Vulture play, or having Michael Keaton play Vulture in this movie was definitely a good casting choice as a villain for as well. And I did watch a video. I remember it was like how Vulture should be a Raimi villain, and honestly, I can agree with that. Vulture being a Raimi villain just fits so well because like the Raimi trilogy villains definitely had some sort of a motive, but sometimes they were good or bad motive, and sometimes they were actually for the most part they were good motives. And I think they did have a good motive, but they just had a wrong way of going with it, just like these villains basically turning his job or basically having his job as like a weapons engineer, but like they were like definitely like alien weapons, alien tech, and it was mostly sold to villains. So that was definitely, I mean, he definitely had a bad way of going, a bad way of trying to get through life while trying to support his daughter and his wife. And then Tom Holland's Peter Parker in this movie, I do love this character and Peter Parker's Spider Man, or not sorry, Tom Holland's Spider Man and Peter Parker. I think he portrayed the young kids very well, um, and I think he actually kind of portrays the Peter Parker character better than like these two. Oh, just by a little bit, in this movie. So no Way Home, I give this the top of amazing. I do love Mysterio as a character in this movie because Mysterio as a villain in this movie was such a fun idea because just simply because of the illusion tech that he had in that movie. The illusion tech basically played mind games with Peter Parker or Tom Holland, and the way that they did it through CGI was so good. I do love the way that they did it in CGI. Um, so I definitely have to give that top of amazing. The plot, I think, was good. I think the plot was amazing as well. Having Nick Fury try and recruit Peter Parker to work with Mysterio at first, with Mysterio becoming or looking like a good guy to defeat the Elementals, even though all of it was illusion tech, was such a great plot twist too. And I actually was kind of surprised by it, even though I should have known better to know that Mysterio was going to be a villain in that movie. So next one up is going to be No Way Home. Definitely a masterpiece of a movie. The fan service was definitely good. I don't think it's as good as Spider-Man 2, but it's definitely a great Spider-Man film. Actually, a masterpiece of a Spider-Man film. Um, yeah, I do love the fan service in this movie. Like having Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield come back was such a great moment too. Um, and then having like Green Goblin and Doc Ock and Electro and Lizard and Sandman were all great choices to bring back. Well, maybe not Lizard. Lizard wasn't that great in the movie, but having those five villains return actually made them definitely made the movie much more fun to watch. Um, and having Electro come back as instead of not being that blue electric character he was, he becomes just a normal person, or he comes back to looking like a physical person, and then having him like come back as like with an even better look to it, with the mask sort of being there from the comics, was definitely a great choice. Doc Ock in this movie was definitely a great choice, or great villain to bring back, I guess. I mean, he's not even. I don't think I would even really consider him a villain. He was bad at first in the movie, trying to attack Tom Holland, Spider Man. But then he became good once they took the chip out of him, and then he definitely became a great character to watch in that movie. Um, Even like redeeming himself, like by helping the three Spider Mans, was great as well. And then having the Green Goblin come back, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, was such a great choice too, because he did his own stunts, and he did a phenomenal job as playing the Green Goblin character once again, and I think even better than the original Spider-Man. Because Green Goblin's original Spider-Man, he was kind of like he's kind of cheesy at times, and was definitely a little bit scary, but the way that they portrayed him in No Way Home definitely made him a much bigger scare factor, and definitely made, I think it made Tom Holland Spider Man, like a, Tom Holland Spider Man's alive a living hell compared to the Tobey Maguire Spider Man. So definitely great choices, and then the casting choice was also great. And then having Doctor Strange come back in that, or come play in that movie, um, as a way to like try and erase the like memory of Peter Parker being Spider-Man, was a great choice to bring in the multiverse as well. So definitely an 8 or 9 out of 10 plot, and like everything else was a 10 out of 10 for me personally. The last one we're going to be doing is Into the Spider-Verse, and honestly, I think this is the best Spider-Man movie for me personally. Even though it was an animated feature, I think it truly deserves of being the best Spider-Man film. And you might hate me for that, because people like to argue that these two movies are better than this one. But I think the plot in this movie was a 10 out of 10. Like the characters in that movie too were great, like Gwen Stacy and Miles Morales and Peter B. Parker, Penny Parker, Peter Porker, and Spider-Man Noir, or yeah, Spider Noir. They were all great, and having Cage play Spider Noir was such a good idea, to like a great casting choice. I personally love him in that movie. The plot, yeah, like I said, was a 10 out of 10. The whole multiverse, it didn't feel rushed or like out of place or anything, which is really surprising for a multiverse type movie. Because for most movies like that, or most shows like that, or anything like that, would definitely feel rushed. However, it just flowed very well in this movie, and for it to be an animated feature is also phenomenal, because they portray it in the way that it looks like a comic book, and it definitely felt like a comic, like you were like looking at a comic book. I love that about this movie, because it did something different and something innovative, and I'm ready to watch the second Spider Verse movie once it comes out. So definitely one of my all time favorites. Characters were great, plot was great. Everything about this movie was just phenomenal, and the soundtrack. The soundtrack was phenomenal in that too. I listen to it almost all the time on Spotify. I still listen to it even like 4 years after, 4 years later. I mean, yeah. So definitely, this is definitely gonna have to be my tier list of the Spider-Man movies. This is how where I would rank them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list video. Make sure to subscribe and like this video. And I'll see you guys in the next one for more content.